Sarah Payne possessed an infectious spirit that radiated joy wherever she went. At just 8 years old, Sarah was known for her bright smile and boundless energy, which she often shared with her brothers and sister during playful adventures in the English countryside. With a love for outdoor exploration, Sarah cherished the moments spent with her family, relishing in the simple pleasures of childhood. Her curiosity knew no bounds, and she approached life with an innocence that captivated those around her. Whether she was chasing butterflies in the garden or giggling with her siblings during games of hide and seek, Sarah's presence brought warmth and light to those who knew her. But on that fateful day, on the 1st of July 2000, tragedy struck, shattering the tranquillity of their lives and plunging them into a nightmare they could never have imagined. The abduction and murder of Sarah Payne would not only rob her family of their beloved daughter and sister, but also send shockwaves through the nation, igniting a fervent search for justice and sparking a national conversation about child safety. Our episodes deal with serious and often distressing incidents. If at any time you feel like you need support, please contact your local crisis centre. This episode involves a crime against a child and may be graphic and upsetting. It may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Born on the 13th of October 1991, Sarah hailed from Hersham, Surrey in England. Described as a vibrant and lively 8-year-old, Sarah's infectious personality endeared her to those around her. She exuded joy and curiosity, finding delight in the simple pleasures of childhood. Whether she was exploring the outdoors with her family or engaging in imaginative play with her siblings, Sarah's presence illuminated every room she entered. Sarah was cherished by her older brothers, aged 13 and 11 at the time, and her younger sister aged 5. Together, they formed a tight-knit unit, sharing laughter, adventures, and the occasional sibling squabble. Their bond was a testament to the love and warmth that permeated their family home. Sarah brought an added sense of wonder and innocence to their collective experiences, infusing each moment with her contagious enthusiasm. Behind Sarah's infectious smile was a loving and supportive family who adored her endlessly. Her parents, Michael and Sarah Payne, doted on their daughter, nurturing her spirit and guiding her through life's adventures. Alongside her siblings, Sarah found solace and security in the embrace of her family, their bond serving as a source of strength and comfort in the face of adversity. Sarah's disappearance unfolded on a summer's day in July 2000, casting a shadow over the picturesque landscape of Surrey, England. On that fateful afternoon, Sarah, accompanied by her siblings, ventured into a cornfield near her grandparents' house in Kingston Gorse, West Sussex. Amidst the rustling stalks and golden hues of the field, the children embarked on a game of hide and seek, their laughter echoing through the countryside. As the game progressed, Sarah, filled with youthful exuberance, darted through the maze of corn, her giggles mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves. In a moment of curiosity, she ventured beyond the boundaries of their play area, crawling through a gap in the harvest and onto the road adjacent to the field. It was there, on that quiet country road, that tragedy struck. Sarah, just a stone's throw from safety, found herself unexpectedly confronted by a stranger who emerged from a white van, snatching her away from the safety of her surroundings. With a sense of urgency, the van sped off into the horizon, leaving behind a trail of dust and uncertainty. In the blink of an eye, Sarah Payne, the spirited 8-year-old with a penchant for adventure, had vanished without a trace. As news of Sarah's disappearance spread, panic gripped the community, igniting a frantic search for the missing girl. From the fields where she was last seen to the surrounding countryside, volunteers and law enforcement officers scoured every inch of the terrain in a desperate bid to find her. But despite their best efforts, Sarah remained missing, her whereabouts shrouded in mystery and fear. For her family, the agonizing wait stretched on, each passing moment filled with dread and uncertainty. As hours turned into days, the hope of Sarah's safe return dwindled, replaced by a growing sense of despair. A nation stood united in grief, rallying behind her family in a show of solidarity and support. But as the days turned into weeks, the painful truth began to sink in. Sarah's parents, Michael and Sarah, were warned by police to prepare for the worst, explaining that the emphasis of their inquiries had shifted and that there was a possibility that their daughter, a vibrant young girl with a zest for life, might not be found safe and well. It was on the 17th of July, just 16 days after being abducted, that the heartbreaking discovery was made. Sarah's lifeless body was found in a field near Pulborough, West Sussex, not far from where she had been last seen. The news sent shockwaves through the nation, as the hopes of a safe return for Sarah were dashed, replaced by an overwhelming sense of grief and outrage. The discovery of Sarah's body marked the tragic end to a desperate search that had gripped the nation. The serene countryside, once a place of childhood innocence and adventure, had become a haunting reminder of the darkness that had claimed Sarah's life. As the details of her abduction and murder began to emerge, the nation recoiled in horror, struggling to comprehend the senseless act of violence that had robbed Sarah of her future. For her family, the pain of losing Sarah was immeasurable. Their world had been shattered in an instant, leaving behind a void that could never be filled. Michael and Sarah Payne, along with Sarah's siblings, were left to grapple with the devastating loss of their beloved daughter and sister, their lives forever changed by the unimaginable tragedy that had befallen them. In the wake of Sarah's death, the nation rallied around her family, offering support and solidarity in their time of need. Vigils were held, tributes poured in, and calls for justice echoed across the country. Sarah's memory would live on in the hearts of those who knew and loved her, her bright smile and infectious spirit serving as a beacon of hope in the face of unspeakable darkness. The man responsible for Sarah's death was Roy Whiting. Born on January 26, 1959, in Horsham, West Sussex, in England. Roy Whiting was a figure shrouded in darkness, his actions casting a long shadow over the lives of those he encountered. While details of his early life remain sparse, his name would become synonymous with one of England's most notorious crimes. Whiting was no stranger to the criminal justice system, with a history marked by violence and predatory behaviour. Prior to Sarah's abduction, he had been convicted of a series of offences, including the abduction and indecent assault of another young girl. On the 4th of March 1995, an 8-year-old girl was abducted and sexually assaulted in the Langley Green area of Crawley. Whiting was arrested several weeks later. A man who knew him came forward after hearing that the abductor's car was a red Ford Sierra, which matched the description of the car that Whiting had just sold. The vehicle was traced by police to its new owner, and a knife was found hidden in it. On the 23rd of June 1995, Whiting admitted charges of abduction and indecent assault and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The maximum sentence for the crime was life imprisonment. However, he received a lesser sentence because he had admitted to the crime at an early opportunity, although a psychiatrist who assessed Whiting after his conviction said that he will likely reoffend once he was released. Whiting was released from prison in November 1997, having served 2 years and 5 months of his 4-year sentence. Whiting would become one of the first people in Britain to go on the Sex Offenders Register, which had been set up in 2003 on the passage of the Sexual Offences Act, which required those jailed for more than 12 months for violent or sexual offences and those thought to be at risk of offending to be registered. The register can be accessed by the police, National Probation Service and the Prison Service, and requires those registered to follow strict requirements. Whiting had been forced to serve an extra 5 months in prison before being released on licence as a penalty for refusing to participate in a sex offender rehabilitation programme. Despite serving time in prison for his crimes, Whiting's predatory instincts remained unchecked, lurking beneath the surface as he continued to pose a threat to society. Roy Whiting's emergence as a suspect in the abduction and murder of Sarah Payne unfolded against a backdrop of intense scrutiny and investigation. In the aftermath of Sarah's disappearance, law enforcement agencies launched a widespread search, employing every available resource in a desperate bid to find the missing 8-year-old. As the days stretched on without any sign of Sarah, investigators meticulously pieced together the timeline of events leading up to her abduction. Eyewitness accounts and forensic evidence provided crucial clues, narrowing the focus of the investigation to individuals who had been in the vicinity of the crime scene on that fateful day. As investigators delved deeper into Whiting's past, they uncovered disturbing details that further cemented their suspicions. Whiting's criminal record, coupled with eyewitness reports placing him near the scene of the abduction, provided compelling evidence linking him to Sarah's disappearance. On the evening of the 2nd of July 2000, officers from Sussex Police first visited Roy Whiting at his seafront flat in Littlehampton as part of their inquiries into Sarah Payne's disappearance. But he was not home. A number of other suspects, particularly convicted sex offenders, were also questioned, and at least one other person was arrested. The police returned that evening and questioned Whiting for over an hour before leaving. The officers left Whiting's flat but were suspicious of his apparent lack of concern for Sarah, which differed from the attitude of at least one other known sex offender who had already been questioned. When Whiting reappeared soon afterwards and attempted to drive away in his van, he was stopped by the police and arrested. He spent 2 days in custody, but the police had no concrete evidence to press any charges, although they had found a receipt for fuel at Buck Barn Garage near Pulborough, not far from Coolham, where one of Sarah's shoes would later be found, which contradicted his alibi of being at a fun fair in Hove at 5:30 p.m. and then returning to his flat by 9:30 p.m. on the night Sarah disappeared. Whiting was released on bail. After his initial arrest, Whiting did not return to his Littlehampton flat and went to live with his father in Crawley. On the 20th of July, 3 days after Sarah Payne's body was found, a shoe was recovered from a roadside in the village of Coolham, 3 miles from Pulborough, and identified as one of those belonging to Sarah. On the 23rd of July, Whiting stole a Vauxhall Nova in Crawley and was pursued by police at speeds of up to 70 miles per hour before crashing into a parked vehicle. Whiting was arrested on a charge of dangerous driving. He was remanded in custody until the 27th of September, when he admitted to the charges and was jailed for 22 months. After Whiting began his jail term for the car theft and dangerous driving, detectives carried out forensic tests on his 1988 white Fiat Ducato van, which he had bought on the 23rd of June. On the 6th of February 2001, following 7 months of investigation, Whiting was charged with the murder of Sarah Payne. Whiting pleaded not guilty to both charges and was remanded in custody while still serving his sentence for the motoring offences, but the new charges against him prevented his release from prison during the summer of that year. Whiting's trial began on the 14th of November 2001 at Lewes Crown Court. The jury heard from several witnesses. The key witnesses included Sarah Payne's oldest brother, who had seen a scruffy-looking man with yellowish teeth driving through Kingston Gorse on the evening that Sarah went missing. Lee Payne did not pick out Whiting, however, when he was selected for an identity parade. One of Sarah's shoes was found by a member of the public in a country lane, and forensic tests had found fibres from Whiting's van on the shoe. This was the only item of Sarah's clothing to be recovered. A strand of blonde hair on a t-shirt was also found in Whiting's van. A DNA test established there was a 1 in 1 billion chance of it belonging to anyone other than Sarah. The jury also heard the testimony of 2 motorists who recalled a white van being parked at the roadside and pulling off a track on the evening of the 1st of July, near the site where Sarah's body was later found. On the 12th of December 2001, after a 4-week trial before Mr. Justice Curtis and a jury, Whiting was convicted of the abduction and murder of Sarah. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. The trial judge said it was a rare case in which a life sentence should mean life. After Whiting was convicted, his previous convictions were revealed, which had been withheld from the jury and the media. Police feared that any knowledge of his previous conviction could jeopardise the trial. In the event of being convicted, Whiting could argue that he had been tried on the evidence of an earlier crime, paving the way for an appeal and possible freedom. The fact that Whiting had now been exposed as a repeat offender sparked renewed calls for the government to allow controlled public access to the sex offenders register. On the day after Whiting's conviction, the Home Office commented that such a system would be unworkable, running the risk of driving paedophiles underground, making it more difficult for the police to monitor and locate them, and putting them in danger of vigilante attacks. On the 24th of November 2002, Home Secretary David Blunkett ordered that Roy Whiting must serve a minimum of 50 years in prison. This made him ineligible for parole until 2051, when he would be at least 92 before parole could be considered. This was, in effect, an agreement with the trial judge's recommendation of a whole life tariff. Within 48 hours of the ruling being made, the Law Lords and the European Court of Human Rights had ruled in favour of another convicted murderer, Anthony Anderson, who was challenging the right of politicians to decide how long a murderer must spend in prison before being considered for parole. In June 2004, the media reported that Whiting would apply to the Court of Appeal for a reduction of his 50-year minimum sentence. On the 9th of June 2010, Whiting's appeal resulted in a High Court judge reducing his 50-year jail term by 10 years. Whiting's lawyers argued that Blunkett's decision was politically motivated, as he had known for some time that he was likely to be stripped of his powers to decide on minimal terms for life sentence prisoners, and that this would be an opportunity of setting a 50-year tariff for Whiting, a move that would prove popular with voters due to the high profile of the crime and the fact that it was still relatively fresh in the public imagination. Shortly before the decision was announced, Myra Hindley had died. She had been a life sentence prisoner whose minimum sentence had been gradually increased from 25 years to a whole life tariff by a succession of Home Secretaries, causing Hindley and her supporters to claim that her sentence was being increased in a similar fashion as Whiting's. Whiting is now serving a 40-year minimum term, which will keep him in prison until at least 2041, making him eligible for parole at the age of 82. Sarah's mother, Sarah, has said she was disappointed by the decision and said that life should mean life. Following Sarah's murder, a campaign was spearheaded by the News of the World newspaper and began in July 2000, requiring law enforcement authorities to make information available to the public regarding registered sex offenders. This became the campaign for what is known as Sarah's Law, named after Megan's Law in the United States, following a similar case several years earlier. Sarah's parents backed the campaign as they were sure that their daughter's killer was a previously convicted child sex offender. Their belief was proved correct 17 months later when Roy Whiting was found guilty of the murder, and it was revealed that he had already had a conviction for abducting and indecently assaulting an 8-year-old girl. The aim of the campaign was for the government to allow controlled access to the sex offender register, so parents with young children could know if a child sex offender lived in their area. Sarah's mother has always insisted that such a law would have saved her daughter's life. A modified scheme whereby parents can inquire about a named individual who has regular access to their children was introduced in 4 pilot areas of England and Wales in September 2008. In August 2010, the Home Office announced that after proving successful, the Child Sex Offender Disclosure Scheme would be extended to cover the whole of England and Wales by spring 2011. This law allows parents to ask the police if somebody with regular access to their children has a record of sexual offences. Sarah Payne's father, Michael, suffered from depression following the disappearance of his daughter. He separated from his wife of 18 years in August 2003 and subsequently became an alcoholic, leading to a 16-month jail term for attacking his brother with a glass in December 2011 while intoxicated. On the 30th of October 2014, he was found dead at his home in Maidstone in Kent. Police reported that there were no suspicious circumstances. He was believed to have died of an alcohol-related illness several days before his body was found. Sarah Payne was made a member of the Order of the British Empire in December 2008 for her work towards the passing of Sarah's Law. In December 2009, she suffered a life-threatening stroke and collapsed while at her home, but went on to make a full recovery. Sarah continues to advocate for victims of child sex abuse. Sarah Payne was 8 years old when she was murdered. She would have been 33 years old this year. This episode is dedicated in her memory. Thank you for listening to this episode of Shadow Crimes. If you like this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our other episodes released every Wednesday, as well as our Fact Friday short episodes released each Friday. Follow us on social media and check out our website at shadowcrimes.com, where mysteries thrive and shadows speak.